The United States released its annual threat assessment report earlier this week. This report, which is released every year by the US Director of National Intelligence, gives a summary of the threats to the US national security, including terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, crime, cyber, and technological threats. Now, this year's report is broadly classified into two sections: non state transnational criminals and terrorists, which details three aspects. First, foreign illicit drugs actors; second, transnational Islamic extremists; and third, other transnational criminals. Under major state actors, the report details the kind of threats from China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, as well as what the growing cooperation among these mean for the country. I will break down the same key highlights from this crucial report. First, let's discuss what the report says about India. The US report called China and India the top state actors in the direct and indirect supply of precursor chemicals for illicit fentanyl production by criminal organizations. It says that the transnational criminal organizations are often enabled both directly and indirectly by state actors such as China and India as sources of precursors and equipment from drug traffickers. China remains the primary source country for illicit fentanyl precursor chemicals and pill pressing equipment, followed by India. For Trump, the continued import of fentanyl and its use as a recreational drug has become a national security issue. In fact, the US president also issued country specific tariffs due to continued flow of illicit fentanyl and its precursor chemicals into the US last month. The report also highlights the role of Mexico-based transnational criminal organizations such as the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartel as dominant producers and suppliers of fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine, and South American cocaine to the US. Additionally, Colombian TCOs and illegal armed groups are also responsible for most of the cocaine reaching to the US, with Ecuador serving as a key transshipment hub. Now, let's move to what the report says about the state actors. The report highlights China as the actor most capable of threatening US interests globally, adding that China is also more cautious than Russia, Iran, and North Korea about risking its economic and diplomatic image in the world by being too aggressive and disruptive. The report says that Beijing will continue to strengthen its conventional military capabilities and strategic forces, intensify competition in space, and sustain its industrial and technology intensive economic strategy to compete with US economic power and global leadership. It also says that China presents the most comprehensive and robust military threat to the US national security. The assessment then says that China has enhanced its military arsenal with advanced ballistic and cruise missiles deployable by land, air, and sea, including from nuclear powered submarines. The country can also strike US infrastructure through cyber attacks, target American space assets, and aim to dominate AI technology by 2030. There's a substantial portion dedicated to Taiwan and maritime flashpoints as well. The report says that Beijing is making steady but uneven progress in capabilities that could be used to seize Taiwan and deter, and if necessary, defeat US military intervention, and it's intensifying the scope, size, and pace of operations around Taiwan. It says, and I quote, Beijing is working to isolate Taipei by pressuring states to downgrade diplomatic ties and support China's unification goal. Since 2016, Taiwan's official diplomatic relationships have dropped from 22 to only 12, and several of the remaining ones are vulnerable to Chinese pressures. It also goes on to talk about China advancing military capabilities for a cross-strait campaign while also using its armed force to exert steady state pressure on Taiwan. Furthermore, the report notes that Beijing will continue to pressure Taipei with economic coercion and probably will increase it if it sees Taiwan taking steps towards formal independence. It could suspend preferential tariff terms, selectively ban Taiwan imports to China, and arbitrarily enforce regulations. The report then goes on to talk about how Beijing's aggressive actions in the South and East China Seas are raising tensions that could trigger a broader conflict. Now, talking about space, the assessment report says China has overshadowed Russia as a space leader and is poised to compete with the United States as the world's leader in space by deploying increasingly capable interconnected multi-sensor systems, and working towards ambitious scientific and strategic goals. In addition to China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are also actively challenging US interests through deliberate campaigns. The report notes that Russia's war in Ukraine has provided Moscow with wealth of lessons on combating weapons and intelligence in large scale warfare. Interestingly, Tulsi Gabbard, on the day the report was released, appearing before the Senate Intelligence Committee, described Russia as a formidable competitor but avoided calling Moscow an adversary. The report emphasized that regardless of how and when the war in Ukraine ends, Russia's current geopolitical, economic, military, and domestic political trends show its resilience and enduring potential threat to the US power, presence, and global interest. It further adds that Russia's ties with China have helped it bypass sanctions, sustains its war effort, sell energy, and counter the US, though at the risk of growing Chinese influence. According to the report, despite the prolonged war, the majority of the Russian population continues to passively accept the war, and the emergence of an alternative to Putin probably is less likely now than at any point in his quarter century rule. The report also highlights that Moscow's massive investments in its defense sector will render the Russian military a continued threat to the US national security, despite Russia's significant personnel and equipment losses, primarily in the ground forces during the war with Ukraine. Russia possesses long range precision strike capability, most notably submarines and bombers equipped with LACMs and anti ship cruise missiles that can hold the homeland at risk. Russia has imported munitions such as UAVs from Iran and artillery shells from North Korea to mitigate to the impact of international sanctions. The report also revealed that Moscow now has more nuclear weapons than any other nation, with land, air, and sea based weapons capable of devastating the US and the world in the event of a major war. It has modernized its nuclear forces to bypass US missile defenses and ensures a strong retaliatory strike capability. Its large stockpile of non strategic nuclear weapons help counter Western military advantages and manage conflicts. Despite multiple failed tests, Russia continues to upgrade its nuclear weapons. It is also expanding its chemical and biological weapon (CBW) programs. Russia has secretly maintained a chemical weapons program and has used nerve agents like Novichok in assassination attempts, including against opposition leaders Alexei Navalny in 2020 and the Skripals in the UK in 2018. Russian forces have likely used chemical weapons against Ukrainian troops in hundreds of attacks since late 2022. The report talks in details and predictably about Russia, Ukraine, and the war. It says that Russia has gained the upper hand in its invasion of Ukraine and is moving towards forcing Kyiv and the West into negotiations on its terms. The ongoing war raises US strategic risks, including escalation to a large conflict, potential nuclear threats, increased NATO insecurity, and a bolder China and North Korea. The US report further adds that both Putin and Zelensky are open to talks with the US and have shown a willingness to test partial ceasefires. Another significant security threat to US, according to the assessment, is Iran, which is seeking to target former and current US officials it believes were involved in the 2020 killing of Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps IRGC forces commander Qasem Soleimani. The report warns that ISIS-K and its affiliates are leveraging online propaganda to inspire and enable the attacks on the West, including the United States. Immediate tensions with Israel, regional and domestic challenges are among some of the factors that are testing Iran's ambition and its capability, the report added. The report also claims that US intelligence continue to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon and that Khamenei has not reauthorized the nuclear weapon program that he suspended in 2003, though pressure has probably built on him to do so. It adds that Iran very likely aims to continue R&D of chemical and biological agents for offensive purposes. Iranian military scientists have researched chemicals that have a wide range of sedation, dissociation, and amnestic incapacitating effects and can also be lethal. The Israel-Hamas conflict triggered by Hamas's October 7 attack on Israel disrupted the diplomatic progress of the Abraham Accords, and and the region's growing stability. The situation in Gaza, as well as tensions between Israel, Hezbollah, and Iran, is expected to remain volatile, according to the report. The report also mentions how Houthis emerged as the most aggressive, targeting commercial shipping, US and European forces, and Israel, with Iranian aid and growing ties to Russia, Chinese defense firms, Al Shabaab, and Iraqi Shia militants. Towards the end, the report states how cooperation among China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea has been growing more rapidly in recent years, reinforcing threats from each of them individually while also posing new challenges to US strength and power globally. It also says that cooperation between China and Russia has the greatest potential to pose enduring risk to the US interests. Their leaders, that is Putin and Xi Jinping, probably believe they are more capable of countering perceived US aggression together than alone, given a shared belief that the United States is seeking to constrain each adversary. I will share the link to full report in the description. This is Varnika Dhawan. Thanks for watching The Print.